Welcome to the Art of Plenty. I'm Amy McInnes, and I am very pleased to be talking to you today about this marker of healthy relationships. And better yet, not only am I going to talk about this marker, but how to actually get back to having this in your relationship. Because at some point as a couple, you did this all the time. It's one of those things that causes us to actually build a relationship with the person in the first place and want to continue to build a relationship. Here's what it is. It's play. When you play with your partner, when you have fun with your partner, it does a whole bunch of things, but that is a marker of a healthy relationship. And we're going to get into that today. Now, there was this season in my life where my husband and I were in the thick of it. And what I mean by the thick of it is we had young children, which is a shock to the system. Having kids is a shock to the relationship system because it completely turns everything up on its head. And then you throw in that you don't have enough sleep. You throw in that your heart is now walking around outside of your body, and new financial pressures. You don't have the time that you had, and you have to figure out this new way of being. It is a very rocky time for couples when they have kids. So that's where we were at. We had a very young family. We had recently started our home business, or our own business, where my husband was working out of our house because we didn't have offices. We were managing 2 mortgages, and I wasn't working. It was a very intense time for us as a couple. And in that time, not only was there a lot of stress, but there was a lot of negativity. And what I remember back to that time is that we didn't laugh as much as we used to laugh, and we didn't play in the same way that we used to play. There wasn't a lot of that sense of carefree and joy that we had experienced in our relationship previously. And we really needed a shift. We needed a change. And I remember there was this one night, and my husband's office overlooked the backyard where our trampoline was. And I was outside jumping on the trampoline, and I was taunting to him because he was working, and I was taunting him to come and play, like, come jump, and like the equivalent of throwing rocks at the window of come outside, let's get together, let's do something fun. And at first he shrugged me off, and I just kept on him. Like, I just kept calling him. And this happened in a time when things were incredibly tense for us and very not great. It just wasn't a joyful time. So in those moments, those aren't times when you feel like having fun. Those aren't times when you want to have moments of carefree joy because you don't feel carefree. And I remember he came outside and jumped on the trampoline, and within moments we're laughing and giggling and physically touching each other, and it just broke the tension in a way that no argument, no discussion, nothing else could break that tension. Just that little bit of playfulness and that little bit of joy completely shifted it. Now, did it solve everything? Well, no. We still had a lot of stressors. We still had a lot of tension. We still had a lot of conflict that we had to figure out a way through. But for those few moments, there was this slice of hope, this slice of joy that made it feel like, okay, we're still here. We can find a way through this together. We just have to figure out how to incorporate more play and still do all of the things that we need to do in order to reduce our stressors and deal with the tension and the conflict. But it just brought in this wave of hope. And I remember physically feeling the tension leaving my body while we were jumping and laughing. So what is play? What is play in a relationship? It's the pleasurable use of your discretionary time. This is how kids figure out the world. They utilize play to figure out mastery. They often describe play as kids' work. It's their way of figuring out how to be in the world, how social things are created and the social dynamics between others. Kids utilize play to develop mastery over their life, and that mastery translates into how we interact as adults and how we navigate the world. And our play as adults is not much different than that. I love this quote from Plato, and whether or not it's true, I think it speaks to the impact that play can have on our relationships. You can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. I just think that's a fabulous way of thinking about it, because when we're thinking about repairing our relationships, when we're thinking about making our relationships better, we often go in the line of fixing problems. And when we think about injecting more play and injecting more joy, it's kind of coming at it from a strengths focus, which I absolutely love. So here is what play actually does for your relationship. And none of this will probably surprise you, but it's a good thing to remember when you're trying to change the dynamic, or even if your relationship is good and you're feeling very settled, it's a way to relieve stress in a relationship. So incorporating more play, incorporating more joy, you can do this even if things aren't bad, even if you want things to simply be better, to be happier. Because when you increase play, you increase positive emotions in the relationship. You increase relationship satisfaction. It helps to build connection and unite you as a couple, because you're in play, you're finding common ground. And what I mean by common ground is that you're establishing, this is how you and I do things. This is how we live our life. And the more play you do, the more you say that this is a part of our relationship and this is a part of the way that we're going through life. Because it's really easy to get out of a habit of play and joy. And best part about this is it actually reduces stress, which the more I think about as an adult and the more people and adults I interact with, this is huge. The amount of stress that people are carrying around, and I don't know if it's just post-COVID, but it's incredible to me the amount of stress that people are carrying. And anything that we can do to reduce stress seems like a good idea. Play is almost like first aid for a relationship. And the reason for that is because in conflict, in a fight, a playful act, a joke can actually cut the tension. Now, it can also backfire incredibly, but it really can change and shift the dynamic, especially if that bit of humor that a person in the relationship throws out to the other, if that bit is received favorably by the other, then play can completely cut the tension. It can even end the fight, because it can be a reminder that, you know what, this isn't worth it. We're getting in too deep. We're getting too serious about this. We're not remembering what really matters. And play and jokes can cut right through that. I'm curious if anybody has had that experience where in a fight, one of the couples does something and it completely breaks the tension because it brings in joy. This is the equivalent of comic relief in a Shakespearean play. Think of the nun in Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare was a master at weaving in comic relief into tragedy. And I think it speaks to our need that when things get really dark or heavy, sometimes we just need to cut it, even just for a moment. Like if you think of Shakespeare plays, it's not that the tragedy doesn't continue. It's not that the seriousness doesn't continue. And it's not as though the conflict or the things that you are working through as a couple isn't going to continue or still need a solution or a resolution or a way to work through. It just cuts it for the moment so that people can get a breather, so that people can remember that, oh, this is the person that I'm with. This is the person that I love, that I want to be with. It also increases bonding, and it can increase your ability, which we just talked about, to resolve conflict. In situations of conflict, when there's play, it can inspire and bubble up kind thoughts towards your partner, which you don't always have. At least I don't always have when I'm in an argument or a conflict with my husband. And playfulness can remind you, oh, I like this person. I think they're funny. I think they're great. Play also promotes spontaneity, that letting loose, that anything can happen feeling, which is accompanied by a sense of lightness. In order to be spontaneous, you have to have a sense of lightness. And oftentimes when relationships are so heavy or when the world is so dark, we need a little bit of that lightness. It injects hope, it injects joy into the relationship, and it can also be foreplay, which is awesome because sometimes in relationships, it can be really difficult to find times for intimacy, especially if you have young children. So playing around can be a way of increasing the possibility that sex is going to be good and that sex is actually going to happen. It also builds a sense of security. And the reason for that is in order to play with someone, you actually have to feel safe. You actually have to trust them because there's an element of risk. That's where that feeling of lightness comes from, that you can kind of do something out of the box or you can say something and it's a bit risky and a bit surprising. And so because that happens in play, when you play with each other and you feel safe in it, it increases your sense of safety and security with your partner because it does involve this sense of letting go. So what does play actually look like? Because it seems silly, like we should know how to play. This is something that mammals do, and this is something that human beings share with other mammals, is that we do play. But when life gets hard, this is one of the first things that goes. We can forget how to do it underneath the burden of life that we often so experience. So what does it actually look like? It can look like teasing. It can look like flirtatious behavior. It can be spontaneous. It could be simply just an activity together, like we went golfing together. That's a way to play together. It can be smiling at each other. It can be laughing together. It can be making silly faces at one another. It can be doing anything out of the ordinary that invokes a sense of joy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be lavish. You don't have to have this big plan or this big amount of money to do it. Playing can be free. It can be dancing. It can be whispering sweet nothings to each other or having private jokes between you. It can be as simple as watching comedy routines on your phone together and laughing about it. Or for me, I absolutely love watching people fall. I mean, I definitely get that feeling in my stomach like, oh my gosh, they must be so hurt. But the surprise and the big wipeouts that people have, it puts me into hysterics. And so if I need a good laugh, I know for sure if I watch videos of people falling and they don't know they're going to fall, it always makes me laugh. So I may not be like you, but there's probably things that you know of that make you laugh. And if there's things that you and your partner share that both make you laugh, like my husband does not particularly enjoy watching people fall. So that's not something that we would do together watch. But if there is something like that, if there's a comedian that you enjoy watching, or you see something funny on your phone when you're scrolling, save it and share it with your partner. Don't just send it to them, but actually watch it together and laugh out loud. You see, at some point, you knew how to do this as a couple. Because unless you're in an arranged marriage or some other situation that perhaps was extreme, when you first build a relationship is often built around play and fun. There was something about your partner that made you feel like, oh, I have fun with them. I want to keep doing things with them. They're fun. And because this happened, at some point you had shared interests, and lots of things can change, but you know how to do this with your partner. The fact that you are together now is evidence that at some point you knew how to do this, and you knew how to do it well enough that you actually decided to get married or choose to have a life together. So can you go back to that time when you first started your relationship? What were the things that you did together? How did you have fun together? And start unpacking that. Start thinking about what were the kinds of things that I said. I used to leave notes for my husband absolutely everywhere. I was always leaving notes. That was a way that I injected joy and play into our relationship was by sending him these little notes, because he would find them all over the place. I would tuck them into his golf bag. I would put them on the windshield of his truck. And so he was constantly getting these surprises. It was a spontaneous thing that I would do for him. And sometimes I would plan like, oh, I'm going to put it here and it's going to say this. There were things that you did when you started this relationship with your partner that were fun. And oftentimes when we're with someone new, we do things that are a bit out of our comfort zone because we want to be with them. And then we get into this routine, we get into this sense of comfort, and we stop pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone to do things for our partner. So that is my challenge to you. Think a little bit about that. Remember the things that you used to do in order to have fun. The ways that you would put yourself out there because you wanted to be with your partner. Can you do that now? In which ways could you change your life now so that you can inject more joy and more play into your relationship? Here's my list of some how, in case you're feeling still a little bit stuck. It doesn't all have to be spontaneous. So the first thing you could do to inject play is actually schedule fun. Now, well, doesn't that take the fun out of it if it's scheduled? Not necessarily, because there's different types of play and there's different types of fun. There's the spontaneous fun that just kind of happens and erupts and you don't see coming. And then there's the fun where you're planning something together and then you go out and do it, like going to do an activity together, maybe going for a hike or a walk, something that you both enjoy, or something that you used to enjoy together, but maybe you haven't done for a while, redoing those things. So actually schedule some fun. And I think that this is more relevant for couples that have a lot of other responsibilities in their life, such as families or work responsibilities or responsibilities in taking care of parents. When you have a really busy, stressful life, it can be hard to actually do something out of the ordinary. It's easy just to get home and sit on the couch or feel like, oh, all I have to do is dishes. And you're just looking around the house, thinking about all of the things that you have to do to keep this life going that you're building, this life that you were dreaming of back when you were having a bunch of fun together. And sometimes it just takes a schedule to break out of that. It doesn't mean that you have to schedule all your fun, but if you're really feeling stuck, it's a great way to shift it. And then it's a reminder. If you write it down, you're more likely that you're going to do it. If you commit to it and set a time, you're more likely to follow through. So utilizing those habit hacks is a great way to get over the hump and to inject some more joy. Now, if you do not know what to schedule, oh, I get it, right? How do you even pick what activity to do? I'm going to tell you my hack that I use for meal planning. I have a list of meals that I know our family eats, and I have them organized by meat because we are meat eaters and we raise meat on our property. So I have them organized by the type of meat, and I have a list of all of the types of meals that we eat that involve pork or lamb or chicken or turkey or beef. And I have these lists down, so when I get stuck and I don't know what meal to plan, I can go to this list and I can remind myself of things that I know our family likes to eat. I'm telling you, this list saves my life because I just get stuck in this routine of always doing the same thing, and can be really difficult to break out of it. So I would encourage you to sit down and do a brainstorming session of what do we do for fun? What do we like to do for fun? And here's the deal. If you don't know this about brainstorming, let me give you a hack for brainstorming. Nothing is off the table. When you're brainstorming, every single idea counts. Every single idea is valid. And the reason for that is when people get into the discussion and they get into talking about what it is that they want to do, and they start generating ideas and coming up with new ideas and more ideas and more ideas. If somebody says something and someone else says that's stupid, or no, there's no way we could do that, or that's too expensive, it immediately stops the flow of brainstorming, because then your brain knows, oh, not everything is a good idea. Not every idea is going to count. So I now have to filter all of my ideas before they come out of my mouth. And so that process that your brain has to go through to start filtering to make sure that you're only submitting good ideas stunts the brainstorming process. That does not mean that everything you do on your brainstorm list is things that you're going to do. You're simply going through the exercise of writing everything down, because you might have some outlandish, lavish idea that you're not necessarily going to be able to do and you're not going to be able to do now. Write it down anyways, because what that idea might do is trigger another idea. Or you might be able to look at that first idea and be like, okay, we can't actually go to such and such. Like, we can't actually go to Hawaii and go to the beach, but we could go to the beach 20 minutes from here. No, it's not the same, but there's similarities of it. So that brainstorming list can keep bringing up and generating new ideas that will build other ideas that you can pull from for your list. When you do your brainstorming list, afterwards, start categorizing it in the same way that I categorize my meal ideas. Which ideas are cheap? Which ideas take a lot of time? Which ideas are fast? Because if you categorize your different ideas, then when you have time and you're like, okay, we're going to schedule some fun, but we only have an hour, or we've got 3 or 4 hours, but we don't have any extra money to allot towards this. And the best thing about injecting fun and injecting play is you don't have to do it with just your partner. If you're family and you got kids and you don't necessarily have help, so your kids have to come, they can be a part of the fun. That doesn't necessarily take away from the fun or the joy of injecting play into your relationship. You can still be doing things you can still have private jokes between you and your partner. And even just that sense of fun as a family builds a lot of those same things that we were talking about that happen when you build joy and play in the couple relationship. Those same things get generated in the family, and that same relationship satisfaction increases in the couple. There are also 1,000 ideas online for cheap dates. So if you're making your brainstorming list and you just feel like you can't get going, you cannot come up with more than 2 or 3 ideas, go online and read through cheap date ideas. Go through lavish date ideas and borrow them. You can use those ideas. So just use them in your list, and you'll see maybe that will generate more brainstorming. Another thing that injects play and fun into relationship is getting active. There's something about moving your body together that just loosens you up, because play is a loose thing. It's a light thing. So when you're actually physically moving, it'll shift things around, and it's easier to get into play mode when you're already moving and shifting. Another piece that I think is really essential is to give yourself permission. It's okay to be childish. It is okay to be silly, because think about all the benefits that you're getting from injecting play. It is okay if you look ridiculous. This is your person. This is the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. This is the person that you're meant to be happy with. So it's okay to be childish. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to have fun. And we can get into routines where we stop doing that. So it's okay. Give yourself permission and just go for it. Make it a priority and go for it. The other thing that I would suggest is to protect it from conflict. When I was first married, my husband and I our whole relationship, we have loved board games, and we still play a lot of board games. But when we were first dating and when we were first married, board games were not good for us. Even though we enjoyed them, we were both so fiercely competitive. Like, it's embarrassing thinking back to how I was at that time. But it just was not good. It was not fun for our relationship. So that wasn't a thing. Oftentimes, if we did that, it would lead to conflict. Now that's not the case at all. We can play board games and have no problem with conflict. It does not get to us at all. But back then, it wasn't fun. So when you're thinking about those things, if you know that you have a sensitivity that if you play in that area, it often leads to conflict, that's probably not a good way to play at this time. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to salvage it later, It just means for now, when you're working at getting more play and having more fun in your relationship, protect it from conflict. Don't do things that you know are going to lead to it. Give into the moment. All around you are moments and opportunity where you can inject joy, where you can smile, where you can laugh, where you can talk about things that brought you joy. The world is full of light. The world is full of hope. So open up your eyes and give into those moments when you see them. Because the more that you do that, the more opportunities you will see for it. It just keeps building. It's like a snowball. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and there's more and more opportunity. If you're still stuck, or if you want another idea, think back to your childhood. What was it that you liked to do? What was fun for you? I remember jumping on the trampoline as a kid, and that was one of the reasons why I went out there that night and jumped on the trampoline, because it was something that I used to do for fun as a kid. But there are lots of those types of things that we used to do as kids. Is there any of those things that you can lean into, that you can rediscover? And it doesn't even have to be from childhood. What about from your adolescence? Was there something that you enjoyed doing? And maybe you never have done it with this partner. Maybe you've never shared that joy with this spouse. And maybe this is an opportunity to go back and see, is this something that I still like doing? Is this something that we want to share? More specifically, here's some ideas of how to inject joy and fun into your relationship. Replicate your first date. Just do it again. I mean, how could that not be hysterical? In the kitchen, say something like, chase me, and start running and see what happens. Or tap your partner and say, tag, you're it, and run. Create something together, be it a cake or a Lego project or a piece of art. Get dirty, get messy, and build something together. I also have a sex challenge, which is one of my freebies. That's a great way to inject play and fun into the relationship. You see, playful couples are happy couples. But I don't know. This is a bit of an egg chicken scenario. What came first? Were they happy so they played more? Or because they were playing, they were happy? It's one of those things that just keeps building as you do it. The more you play together, the happier you are. The happier you are, the more you play. And the challenge of that is when things are really negative, when things are really heavy, when there's a lot of conflict, when there's a lot of contempt, there's a lack of safety and there's a lack of trust, and that can make it really difficult to play. It can make it way harder to inject joy, especially if there's a negative sentiment override, which simply means that things that are actually neutral or slightly positive, the other person reads as though it's negative. And all interactions start feeling negative, or you start interpreting their negative, or that negativity is directed towards you. And it can be really difficult to break out of that cycle, because you can't just work on injecting joy. You also have to work on reducing conflict. So it's both. In those situations, start small. Be gentle with the play. It's a challenge to get out of routines, to get out of the way we interact with one another, but it's worth it. So that's my challenge to you today, is to find a way to play. And if you're not in a relationship with a significant other at this time, but you have a relationship with your kids, my challenge to you is, how do we include more play into that relationship? How do I include more play and joy just into my life as an individual? Because play and joy doesn't just change your relationship, it can change your whole life. And that matters, because you're here for a reason and you're meant to do something. You're meant for something. And I can't help but feeling that when we embrace play, when we embrace joy, we're more on track for living the life that we were meant to live, so that we can do the things that we're meant to do. Because life isn't supposed to be all work and all burden. It's meant to have joy. It's meant to have hope. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in today. If you haven't already and you are a regular listener to Art of Plenty, please hit subscribe. It makes a difference to me. I'd love your comments. I'd love to hear your reviews of the show. Send me a DM if you have any questions about any of this, or if you have found ways to inject play into your life and into your relationship. I would love to hear it. And if you're struggling in a relationship and that really spoke to you, that piece about our relationship is so thick with conflict and so thick with tension and negative sentiment override that I don't even know how to get back into play, I encourage you to reach out and find a solid marriage counselor, because there are a lot of talented people out there that can help shift that conflict. This episode is not meant to be professional help or to replace therapy by any means. I'm so glad you've tuned in. Have a very beautiful day.